Now, a story about one man and his dog. It's a mystery story that ends up with both man and dog being attacked and stabbed to death in a wood in Sussex. As the story unfolds, you may feel that you have rather little sympathy for the man. He was a drugs dealer, and one that cheated his customers at that. But the police are particularly anxious to catch the killer. It looks like what's at stake here may be a drugs ring whose members are prepared to kill to get their way. The trail starts at a seaside town. Hastings is a quiet south coast resort with pleasure craft and fishing boats and a tradition of smuggling that goes back generations. The modern contraband is drugs, and for those that want it, there's anonymity in a town that's used to having visitors, and there are good connections to London and beyond. 5 months ago, these men discovered how deadly some of those connections are. Near Brighton, 12 miles from Hastings, there's an aerial ropeway that links a gypsum mine and its processing works. For 3 months, there'd been something lying, decomposing and undetected in the undergrowth.
What you got there? What you found? Leave. Get away. Hey! Easy.
Gary Collins was barely recognisable. He'd been 25, tall, with dark curly hair. He and the dog had been beaten and stabbed repeatedly. Gary had always lived in Hastings, a fit young man, a sportsman. He'd been living with his girlfriend, and the two of them had been saving up to buy a house. Gary and his Alsatian collie Trudy had gone missing 2 weeks before Christmas. The last time they were seen alive was when they left their rented flat in St Thomas's Road in Hastings. It's 10 o'clock on the morning of the 12th of December last year. A neighbour saw him leave. Gary Collins should have gone to work that day, but didn't. He had a part-time job packing eggs, but police now know Gary had been running a little business of his own. He started by selling small amounts of cannabis to friends, but then to an ever-growing market. He was known to customers and dealers as the man with the dog. The two of them had been frequent visitors to London in the year before they died. Several of Gary's associates have helped police to build up a picture of his growing trade in drugs. So far, Gary's movements have been traced to North and West London in particular. He's known to have met contacts in Camden, Islington and Kensington. And it's clear his drugs dealing involved double dealing too. Two people, a former partner in crime of his and one of Gary's former cannabis suppliers, have given matching descriptions of an incident that shows the dangerous and devious game Gary was involved in. The drug supplier was to meet them at Victoria.
Get it all?
Yeah, fine.
I'll put this in the boot.
Yeah. You got a fag?
You have one of these, you want one?
Where's he gone?
So I made a phone call on it.
You got the money, then?
Well, he'd give it to you to snout, didn't he?
You bastards.
By then, it was too late. Gary's accomplice vanished with the drugs, and Gary just drove off. Gary's deals were also growing more ambitious. Through Interpol, police have traced a grand scheme for smuggling cocaine through Brussels and Amsterdam, financed by exporting illegal amphetamines to Stockholm. Shocked by Gary's murder, another dealer at the time explains how Gary was now playing in a bigger league.
He was known as the dealer, the man with the BMW and the dog. He would have been an easy target to any of the other type of gangsters that are just looking plainly to rip people off. You know, I mean, they'll sort of promise the earth and all they want is to rip off everything. They'll even come up with the hash and you'll come up with the money and they'll take both.
What happened in the last few hours of Gary's life is still not known. Remember, it's Monday morning, 2 weeks before Christmas. Someone drove his grey BMW to Battle railway station. The station staff saw it there at noon. The rest is speculation. Except for one thing. Whoever took the car there took the trouble to turn it round in the narrow car park to face the exit. Perhaps Gary drove it there himself. Maybe he'd arranged to meet a contact there. Curiously, though Gary was meticulous about his BMW, the car was left unlocked. Maybe there was an unexpected change of plan. Or maybe Gary met someone at Battle Station from a London or Hastings train, and perhaps they drove off together, and the car was later taken back there after Gary's death. Or maybe Gary never went to Battle Station. The car was simply dumped there after he was killed. Whatever happened at the station, somehow, presumably with someone, Gary went to the secluded woods by the gypsum mine near Brighton. With him, as almost always, was his dog. Somewhere he changed into Wellingtons from the light brown moccasins he'd been wearing when he'd left the flat. The moccasins are an important clue. They haven't yet been found. It's fairly certain from forensic evidence that Gary was alive when he arrived at the woods near Brighton. Maybe he was forced there. Maybe he was going to retrieve some hidden drugs or money. On Monday, December the 12th last year, Gary Collins and Trudy went on their last walk together. Well, you might see something about the death of Gary Collins in the papers tomorrow, because today an inquest at Hastings into his death recorded a verdict of unlawful killing. Superintendent Clements, it's obviously a very difficult case for you, because people who've been dealing in drugs, people who've been buying cannabis, are most unlikely to come forward as witnesses.
That's true. We've considered the matter so serious that we've granted an amnesty against anybody that has had any drug dealings with Gary Collins, in the hope that they'll come forward and give us information or evidence that may help us trace the person responsible for Gary's death.
To be candid, even though you say you've got an amnesty, I can imagine people watching who may have known Gary, may have, say, bought cannabis from him, don't think they can solve the murder and will be very reluctant, particularly if they don't have a record, to get on police files.
Well, I can quite definitely say that anyone that comes forward and gives details about dealings they've had with Gary can feel absolutely certain nothing will happen. We have plenty of statements from people who've had dealings with Gary, that statements which could have landed them into very serious trouble, but we've taken no notice of this because we're after a particularly vicious criminal who's killed this man in a most savage manner.
The man in the silhouette?
That's right.
Who helped us, what's happened to him? Have you taken action against him?
No, not at all.
And if people want to ring anonymously, will you listen to their information?
Absolutely. Obviously, the best information is from persons who give their name and address, but anyone who wants to ring anonymously, we should be more than pleased to hear what they've got to say, Mr. Ross.
Now, if people do ring in, What is it that you want to know? What sort of people do you want to reach?
We want to hear from people that have known Gary, especially in drug stealing, anybody that might have seen him when he arrived at Battle Railway Station on the 12th of December, or perhaps even out at Brightling Wood. People that might have been on holiday, that just happened to be passing and didn't even know that a murder had been committed.
The date, of course, 2 weeks before Christmas, the 12th of December,
That's
wasn't
right.
it? So you really want anybody who knew Gary, did drug stealing, but knew him at any stage and may know nothing about the murder?
Well, if they think they can help us at all, we would be more than pleased to hear from them.
Have you got hold of everyone you want in particular? Are there any people you know of out there that haven't yet come forward?
There is a lady, a blonde woman, in a brown coat that has been seen by a green Toledo, that has been seen with Gary on the A21, which is the battle to the main London road, on at least 2 occasions, and on one occasion which she was with 2 men who carried grey disposable bags. And I would like to say, Mr. Ross, that there is also, of course, a reward of £5,000 offered by Mr. Collins Sr., Gary's father, for any information that leads to the arrest and conviction of the persons responsible for Gary's death.
Bill Clements, thank you very much indeed. Right, again, the numbers, remember there's an amnesty, remember whatever you think about cannabis or other drugs, we're looking for a murderer and a man who could strike again. Call us here, please, 01 811 8055. You can talk to civilians if you prefer, or you can call Sussex Police directly. Their number, Hastings 444 212. That's 0424 444 212. 2 weeks ago, we received a tragic and very moving letter from Robert and Lee Goble in Hastings. They were desperate to find whoever set fire to their home 3 months ago while they and their children were asleep inside. At the same time, Sussex Police asked us for help. In the reconstruction you're about to see, many people, including neighbours who were there that Saturday night, have taken part. Actors and actresses play the Goble family. Their house is 38 St Helens Road, which is a main thoroughfare in Hastings. Our reconstruction begins in the early hours of Sunday, February the 3rd.
Sammy! Sammy! Come on! Come, Sammy! Sammy, come! Come! Finished.
Right.
What time are we going to your mum's tomorrow, love?
Oh, I said about lunchtime. Must look in on the kids.
Lee Goble kissed the children goodnight as usual before she and her husband went to bed. It was about 1:30. Just over an hour later, a taxi drove up St Helens Road. The driver recalled seeing 2 men with an oil drum beside a van parked near the Goble's house. He assumed they'd run out of petrol. A passing driver remembers a man dashing across the road into the park opposite number 38. Hearing her screams, Bob Spice, a builder who lives next door, rushed out to help. Another neighbour phoned the fire brigade. As Bob got a ladder up to the parents, he realised the children were still trapped in the back bedroom. He tried desperately to reach them. Another neighbour, Ron Salt, realised he'd have to climb the ladder to try and persuade the parents to come down. He'd already noticed a young man simply standing and watching. He was holding a white crash helmet.
For God's sake! Come on down! Come on! Listen! Get out of the house! The fire brigade on the way!
As the ambulance left, the police already knew that the fire had been started deliberately. The two children never recovered. The arson attack had now become a murder inquiry. And Detective Superintendent Bill Clements is in charge of the case. Do you think murder was the intention?
Well, I think that they meant harm to the Goble family because by pouring the petrol on the stairs, they cut off their way of escape, so they meant to harm them, yes.
Have you found any possible grudge against the family?
No, they're a very happy family. We've seen all their friends and relatives. Nobody has any grudge against the Gobles, and certainly they couldn't have had anything against those two little children.
So no apparent motive at the moment. You found that oil can in the garden. Do you think that's significant?
Yes, at some time it's contained petrol. It doesn't belong to any of the Gobles, and it doesn't belong to any of their near neighbours. But it certainly contained petrol.
What's rather surprising is that it was a main road, and yet not many witnesses have come forward.
That's true. In fact, we've got over 30 people that have been described by various witnesses who we've still yet to trace. There are a lot of people still outstanding.
Now, a number of people you particularly want to get hold of, the two men who were seen beside that van.
That's right. They were seen sometime earlier than in that evening. One of the men was in his mid-30s with a sallow complexion and wearing a bomber jacket. They need to be eliminated from the inquiry.
And the van's quite unusual.
Yes, it's exactly as shown. It's a BMC model, except that at the rear there are windows in the doors. It's a model that hasn't been manufactured since 1972.
And do you know what colour it was, the van?
No, the taxi man who saw it can only say it's red. Dark, sorry.
A dark colour, right. And you also want to know who that man was on the screen there who was running across the road?
Yes, he was seen just before the fire was discovered. He's most important. He's a young man in his early 20s in a sort of motorcycle jacket, probably leather. He's most important for us to find.
That was about 3:45.
Yes.
And interesting, he had a leather jacket because the young man who was seen just gazing at the blaze also had a leather
That's
jacket.
right, and he, the man with the white crash helmet was at the scene when the fire was discovered. He could be the same man as previously shown, but of course they were described by different witnesses.
So we need to find those.
Most important those men are.
Anyone else you particularly want to find out who you know was there?
Yes, there's a young lady who was walking her dog. She was seen within 100 yards of the scene just about the time of the fire. It's most unusual for anybody to be walking a dog that time of night, and we would have liked for her to have come forward.
Right, so to sum up, exactly what do you want people to come forward with tonight?
We want anybody who didn't have relatives in their house who fear they might know the identity of the person responsible, and even if it means informing on someone they know, it's most important that they come forward.
Detective Superintendent, thank you. And if you think you can help, please do ring us. You can talk to the detectives, or if you prefer, you can talk to a BBC researcher. The number 01811 8055. The lines are open, but if you can't get through, keep trying. Or you could call Sussex Police in Hastings. The number 425 000. That's 0424, the code for Hastings, 425 000.
This month's reconstructions. It's a crime that's been in the news again tonight. It was a week ago that Karen Hadaway and Nicola Fellows went missing. At about this time, search parties were setting out to look for them. Sussex police have helped us, with the family's consent, to reconstruct what's known so far. It may be that their killer was a local man, perhaps he even knew the girls, but he could have come from anywhere at all. What's not in doubt is that last Thursday he was in Brighton. The Moulscombe estate lies across the A27 Brighton to Lewes Road. Just opposite is Wild Park. This is where last Friday afternoon 2 local teenagers had come to search the undergrowth in response to police appeals for help. And this is where they found the bodies of the 2 girls in a play den deep inside the undergrowth.
Right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The information from the public continues to flow in.
It's now day 5 of the inquiry.
The team again today. We seem to be increasing it almost daily now.
This is the largest investigation in Sussex since the Brighton bombing. Already 10,000 people have been interviewed and 4,000 homes have been visited.
There were a number of new sightings of the 2 girls up until about 6:30 p.m. Unfortunately, we still have not got a sighting of these girls going into that park.
Newick Road, East Moulscombe. At 5 last Thursday afternoon, the girls were playing with a group of friends outside a neighbour's house. Soon after, they made their way from Newick Road here across the A27 to Wild Park. A park policeman clearly remembers seeing them, even though the girls were forbidden to come here by their parents.
5:15 last Thursday, I was walking through the park. I saw 2 girls under the tree, swinging on the tree. I approached them and told them, asked them what they was doing up there. Now come on, what are you doing up there? Before you get hurt yourself.
That was 5:15, and this is the last precise timing police have. Sometime in the next half hour, the girls crossed back over the main A27. At roughly 5:45, they were outside the fish and chip shop in Barkham Road. Next, they were seen going down the subway that leads back to the Wild Park side of the road. It was now 6 to 6:15.
Anyway, you're going to the Wild Park.
From the subway, they must have headed up Coldene Lane towards another fish and chip shop. This girl, 16-year-old Tracy Cox, is the next witness. She noticed the girls, whom she knew, outside the shop, and as she left, she spoke to them. Tracy then walked with them back over the main road and into the estate. Police are anxious to establish precise timings. The 3 girls passed the playground near Barkham Place. Could you have seen them there? Nicola, with the dark hair, was wearing a very bright pink sweatshirt.
Isn't it about time you two are going home now? Yeah, we are.
Tracy says she left them near the end of Ringmer Road, not far from where they lived.
Tracy! Bye!
By now, it was getting dark, and both girls' parents had been looking for them. This girl, Michelle Tippett, was coming down Barkham Road after delivering papers on the estate.
Right, where are you going? Oh, we're going to Wild Park. All right, you better tell your mum first. No.
Michelle met them at roughly 6:25.
Come on, Karen. 1 minute. Karen, come on. Right. I'll see you later. Bye.
After that, they crossed the road again, and at about 6:30 they were seen outside the entrance to the park.
My Karen wouldn't go off with any strangers. Had to be somebody that Nicola and Karen both knew, both trusted, and it's very important for everybody, not just necessarily people on this estate, but on all the estates in Brighton. If you know something, no matter how small it seems to you, to the police, it's very important. Just get in touch with them. Ring them anonymously, you know, if you must do. Anything, no matter how small, please just get in touch with them, because it could save the life of somebody else's child.
John McConnell, there can't be many more distressing crimes you've had to investigate.
No, this was a particularly horrific offence of murder committed against two children of tender years, and both were indecently assaulted just prior to their death. I'm therefore appealing to anybody that saw these two girls in the Wild Park or Moulscombe area after 5 p.m. on Thursday last, the 9th of October. I'm also appealing for anybody who was in the Wild Park area or Moulscombe area of Brighton during that period and who have not yet come and seen us and told us what they were doing.
Now, you announced today that 2 young men were seen running away from that park. That was about 7 o'clock, 7:30 that evening.
Yes, there were 2 youths seen by 2 separate people coming away from the Wild Park area at approximately 7:30 p.m. last Thursday, the 9th of October, and we're very anxious to get them to come forward so that they can be eliminated from the inquiry.
Now, they might be completely innocent, of course, just running away, larking around. They might have been late for something, and they might be a little reluctant after all this publicity to come forward, thinking, oh, we're going to be in for some pretty tough questioning.
Yes, that's quite true, but it's essential that they do come forward so that we can eliminate them and then get on with looking at other people who might be more significant in the inquiry.
Obviously, it's going to waste hundreds of man-hours if they don't come forward voluntarily as well.
Yes, we've had a very big team of officers on this inquiry, and of course we're anxious to use their resources in the best way possible.
Now, there was an appeal some time ago about a man who'd been cruising in, I think it was a blue car, a couple of weeks before this incident, and it was thought that he might have been trying to solicit small girls.
Yes, that's true. We've been trying to establish the identity of a man who, approximately 3 weeks ago, tried to inveigle a young girl into his car, which was a blue car, and as yet we haven't traced this man. He was said to be approximately 25 years of age. He had ginger hair, and of course we are again very anxious to trace him, so that again perhaps he can be eliminated from the inquiry also.
Well, please remember, if you can help in any way, it might be that someone's moved in to you near where you live who you think might have been in Brighton at the time. It might have been somebody local about whom you have suspicions. It doesn't matter where you live. If you can call us, you might prevent what happened to Karen and Nicola from happening again. The number here in the studio, here it is, 01811 8055, 01811 8055, or you can call the incident room in Brighton directly, 0273 606 744. That's 0273 606 744. At the beginning of October, in a quiet residential street in a seaside town, this woman, Marion Rilka, was attacked and murdered in the hallway of her own home. Detectives have no motive and frankly not much evidence. But maybe you can begin to resolve the mystery if you can help identify a young man who was seen around the neighbourhood that day. Our reconstruction begins as summer is drawing to an end in Sussex. It's party conference week in Brighton, just down the coast from Hove, so both towns still have a lot of visitors. But by the beginning of October, the tourist season's over. Nonetheless, as the sun comes up on Tuesday the 1st, it promises to be a dry, fine day. Marion Rilka set off with her daughter, as usual, at about 8:45. Her husband, a merchant seaman, had just returned to his ship, so life revolved around her child.
Now listen, don't forget we've got that optician's appointment this afternoon, so no dawdling on after school. I'll be here on the dot to pick you up, all right?
All right, Mummy, bye.
At 9, as every weekday morning, Marion travelled into town, where she worked mornings only, as a secretary. Then, as every Tuesday, she met her sister-in-law for lunch.
Oh, I need a cigarette. Right then, what should we have?
Let's just have the usual, yeah?
The usual? You and your usual. Well, what about a cup of tea or sausage sandwich?
At about the same time, close to Marion's house in Hove, several people noticed someone acting in a way they thought suspicious. For a time, he was seen hanging around the bus stop on Portland Road. At 1:45, Marion and Wendy finished lunch.
You're not going to be late, are you?
15 minutes later, a man was seen at the top of Marion's Road. The witness wondered if he was simply waiting for someone or was about to rob a bank. 10 minutes after that, a woman who lived 100 yards away from Marion arrived home from work.
Yes?
Can you tell me where Harmsworth Road is?
No, I've never heard of it. I'm sorry, I can't help you.
Well, is there anyone in there who can?
No, we can't. Why don't you go down to the local shop? Someone there will give you directions.
Well, I've already been in one and they didn't know.
There's plenty of shops down there. Why don't you ask someone else?
Well, haven't you got a map or something? I mean, could I come in and have a look at it? You must have a map in there.
I'm sorry, we don't have a map. Hello, Ruby. It's Pam from next door. I've got this chap at the door. He keeps ringing the bell. I can't get rid of him. I wondered if Chaz was in.
Hey, you. What exactly do you want?
I wanted to speak to somebody about Social Security.
Well, we don't know anything about that sort of thing, and neither does she, so clear off. And if you want to have a word about that, try along at the Marion Centre. They might be able to help you.
Oh, you mean the YMCA?
Yes, exactly. That'd be better than bothering her about it. He would be about 23 to 25 years of age and about 5'11" in height. His hair was a bit lanky and a mousy sort of colour, not too dark, shoulder length. He had a casual jacket, which was with a spray coming across each shoulder of white flowers, and he had a T-shirt in white.
15 minutes later, around 2:30, it's thought Marion arrived home. When Marion didn't arrive to collect her daughter from school, a teacher alerted a next-door neighbour. Marion's body was discovered in the hallway of her house. Tim O'Connor, how can viewers help?
Well, certainly what we're very interested in is the man in the reconstruction. If that man is watching, then he could certainly save us a lot of time in trying to find him, which would obviously be better for him. Please come forward and help us if you're not involved in the murder. If that man is involved in the murder, and if anybody else does recognise him, then please ring us. We must identify that man.
Distinctive face, the actor looked very much like him, though the hair might be a bit lankier, we're not sure.
Yes.
The clothing, very distinctive.
Very distinctive jacket. It's a bluish, possibly beigeish type jacket. It's got very distinctive embroidery on, little alpine flowers. Very, very distinctive. The man had a black leather belt with silver studs. He had black pointed shoes with silver studs on the outside, and he had 2 large rings, metallic type rings, on his finger.
Now, one of those rings, or something, left a mark on Marion's body.
Yes, there was a bruise that came up on the body, which did occur at the time that she was murdered. Now, it's an unusual shape. It's in a kind of a curved 7. We're anxious, could it be a ring? Could it be the butt end of a knife? If you recognise that bruise, please help us.
You're putting up a reward. It's very unusual for the police to put up a reward on a case. Why on this one?
Yes, it is. You're right. It is very unusual. It shows the emphasis that we in Sussex are putting on catching this individual. She was a totally innocent lady, a housewife. It was a motiveless crime, and we do need to catch him. And hopefully somebody will come forward.
Well, there's a £5,000 reward, but I hope he won't need money to get you to ring in if you can help. Here's the number, 081 811 8181. Several detectives on the case here, of course, or you can call their colleagues at Hove Police Station. That's 0273 778 922. 0273 778 922.
Well, our next case is the callous murder of Nicola and Harry Fuller at their cottage in the village of Wadhurst in Sussex. The couple had only been married 6 months, and their families are finding it painfully hard to come to terms with the tragedy. During our reconstruction, you'll hear the actual voice of a man police are desperately trying to trace. We begin at a shopping precinct in Tunbridge Wells, where Nicola had been working part-time.
Oh, that's nice. Is it for someone special?
Well, for my boyfriend.
Would you like some ribbon?
Yes, please.
Nicky was a shy, private, quiet, dainty little girl, really.
I hope he likes it.
I'm sure he will. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Harry was just the opposite. He was considerably older than her. A very likeable character, though, larger than life, but he seemed to come from a different way of life than that we were used to.
He brought Nicky out of her shell, and she seemed to really enjoy life, being with him.
Right you are then. OK, you're a gentleman. Just leave it to me. No problem. Cheers, mate.
Harry was always very protective towards Nicky. There was always a house full of flowers.
They met in June and the wedding was in August. The whole thing we thought was rather quick. But it was like a roller coaster. Once it started, there was no way of stopping it. But again, they were very happy. We grew to like him very much. He used to come here to Sunday lunch most weekends. He seemed to be looking for a sort of a family unit, and he certainly became a very popular member of the family.
Hello? OK, mate. Leave it to me.
Harry Fuller bought and sold cars. Most of his business was done on the phone.
I don't know, but if you leave it to me, I'll try and get it down a bit. No problem at all. OK, cheers.
Although he didn't read or write well, he had an eye for a good deal. A lot of his transactions were done in cash, and he often carried large amounts of money around.
Lot number 201 coming in, the Vauxhall Cavalier, the 1600L, January of 1989.
The day before he died, Harry spent the early part of the afternoon with a friend.
I've known Harry for about 13 years. I asked him to get me a vehicle because, having bought me one before, I knew he'd get me something reasonable. And I spent a couple of hours on that day with him at the auctions.
At £2,400 and selling for the first, at £2,400 selling for the second, third and final time, £2,400 K, your car, sir.
Harry was always buying cars and looking for somewhere to store them. When he got the house at Wadhurst, it was like him winning the pools because he got a free car park there for all the cars he wanted to park.
It was last October that Harry and Nicola had moved to Sussex and rented Blackman's cottage in Wadhurst. It's Tuesday evening. Nicola was going out to a reunion with some friends at a restaurant in Tunbridge Wells.
I better go and get ready.
Oh, your friend phoned earlier on, but she's going to ring you back later.
A few days earlier, Harry started recording his phone calls. No one knows why. This is the only caller police haven't been able to identify.
How are you doing? Very well indeed. It couldn't be better. I popped over last night to see you. What time? About 7. I was up the gym, up at the golf club at Tysus. There were some lights on, but I knocked. Right. See you in the morning, my darling. Hey, matey. 8 o'clock. Take care. Bye. Ciao for now.
Harry was a late riser, and to agree to an early morning meeting was very unlike him.
Oh, it's Harry. He's on time.
Harry had arranged to meet Nicola at the restaurant at about 11 o'clock to bring her home.
Thursday. You're going Thursday.
Yeah, to Lanzarote.
Nicky was one of my closest friends. We'd known each other for a number of years. We used to go out together.
Yeah, I hope so. It'll be a nice break, you know.
Hello, Harry.
Hello. Nicky and Harry seemed very happy together. They were going on holiday to Lanzarote the following week. She was really excited about going to get suntan before the summer.
Early the next morning, a postman was startled by a car pulling out from behind the Fuller's cottage.
It's normally very quiet in the morning. A dirty blue Ford Escort pulled out in front of me, which caught me by surprise. The passenger seemed 35 to 40, tall and well built, and the vehicle travelled towards Tunbridge Wells.
Half an hour later, at about 7 o'clock, a witness saw 2 men get out of a cream-coloured Sierra and walk up the path to the cottage. The witness who saw these men gave the information anonymously. Police need him to contact them again.
Hello, old son.
Nobody saw the 2 men leave, but we know that Harry went out of the cottage about an hour and a half later, leaving the door ajar.
Good morning, can I help you?
20 Embassy number 1, please.
Thank you. 226, thank you. That's £10, thank you very much.
Thanks, cheers.
Bye-bye.
Nicky had gone to a reunion on Tuesday night, and I hadn't spoken or seen her since Sunday, so I decided to ring her at 8:45, and I rang and the line was engaged, and I continued to ring every 5 minutes until 9:15.
Nicola and Harry Fuller had been shot dead just 10 minutes after Harry's visit to the tobacconist.
You know, she just seems to have found happiness and then suddenly it's snatched away from her, which seems dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. Anyone could do that to her. I feel that there's part of me that's gone, and there is this big hole that's never going to be filled. And I do miss her so.
Well, of course, it's going to be absolutely crucial, isn't it, Superintendent Hill, to discover who that unidentified caller is. We can listen to that call again. Our engineers have taken Harry's voice out of the tape you're about to hear, so that the only voice on the tape is the caller's voice. Do you know who this is?
How are you doing? First thing. Too early for you? About 8. I popped over last night to see you. There were some lights on. He's gone away. He's left them with his missus. So we'll zip down there. Won't be long. About, what, 10, 15 minutes. They're down the other side of Roberts Bridge.
So that's just the caller's side of the conversation. And that meeting was arranged very close to the time that Nicola and Harry were killed. So until this man comes forward, he's got to be your prime suspect.
It's absolutely crucial we find this man. So far we haven't found him and he hasn't come forward. There may be some reason for that, but we really need to find him, and I would ask anybody who's listening tonight who either recognises his voice or who thinks they recognise his voice to please make contact with us. Alternatively, if the man concerned is listening and he himself wants to contact us for us to eliminate him, then please contact us.
Do you think he might be called Steve, or...?
Well, there's an indication that he might be called Steve. However, I would want anybody who might recognise the voice, irrespective of whether the person is called Steve or not, to contact us.
Now, you want the witness who saw the men in the cream Sierra to come forward again, but you have another witness who saw another car and a man early that morning.
That's correct. Just after 8 o'clock that morning, in the car park at the rear of Blackman's cottage, a lady saw a long black bonneted vehicle, something like a Jaguar, pull up, and a man get out of the vehicle, and he was fairly distinctive in that he was wearing a very long black coat, almost to the ground. We would like anybody else who saw that man, or indeed saw the vehicle, to make contact with us.
And if you know who that voice was on the phone call, if you can shed any light at all on this case, please do call us. There's a substantial reward for information leading to arrest and charge. The number here in the studio is 08181118181. Our lines here are very busy, as they were last month, so do take a special note of the incident room number at Sussex Police Headquarters, and that's 0273 480 999. That's 0273, the code for Lewis, 480 999.
Bobby Jones was someone you could hardly miss. He was 6'4", and not surprisingly was well known in his native town of Hastings. His mother died about 5 years ago, and he lived with family friends. By all accounts, he was fairly popular with young and old alike, but he must have trodden on someone's toes, and maybe you know why. Or if you live on the south coast, perhaps this film will trigger memories of events that took place 8 weeks ago.
Sussex murder hunt. This report from Alan Rook.
The body was left lying face down in the mud and undergrowth. Police have issued this description. He was white, 6'3" tall, with close cropped hair. He was wearing a sports jacket with a large diamond-shaped Umbro motif on the back. An incident room has been set up. 25 officers, many from outside the area, have been drafted in to help with the inquiry. Detectives don't yet know enough to determine...
Oh, hello, is that the police? I've just seen on the news about you having found a body in the park. Our Bobby. Oh, Bobby Jones, he lives with us. And he didn't come back last night. And I haven't heard a word from him all day.
Well, I was empty. I just couldn't believe, you know, and I kept saying, no, it's not, it can't be Bobby. But it was Bobby. And I just more or less ran out, crying, got in my car, went to work and broke my heart there. If Bobby was in a bad mood, he would have a sour face. But he used to snap out of it. But then the children used to come up, Bobby, can we play football? Away they went. They was gone.
This is the one that's got to go up to Marion.
Right.
I don't know where she's going to put it exactly, but she is expecting it.
In the early evening of Tuesday, January the 30th, Bobby was at home, helping Doris with various chores.
Mind that top is loose. Thanks.
Right. These boys were also heading out for a family chore.
My friend's dad just lives up the road and he needed a tool for his decorating to me and Mark. My friend thought we'd go and take it to him.
What about your French mixing? On top in that? Yeah. Right in? What, Bobby?
Fine, boys. You alright? No, I'm picking on you, no?
Nah.
What's this?
It's not mine.
It's alright, it's a mate. Have a look.
The man with Bobby, he had ginger hair, he was dressed scruffy, he had black jogging bottoms on with white bits of clay or paint over him.
Come on. See you later.
See ya.
Let's go back to my gaff.
Where's that then?
Pulborough Road.
Yeah?
Bobby wasn't out for long. By roughly 7, he was back at home.
Just off to bingo. What are you going to do with yourself tonight?
Just popping out for a while.
OK.
See you later.
Bye.
This is another part of Hastings about an hour later.
I went out just before 8 o'clock that evening to start service 32 as normal.
It's very quiet, as it is on a Tuesday, especially in the winter, nobody about.
Shortly before 9 o'clock, a friend of Bobby's was making her way home.
As we walked down on opposite sides of the road, Bob waved and I waved back, and a little further down the road he waved again and I waved back, and he was trying to make me laugh. He was a funny person.
Hi.
How you doing, all right?
I'm just home.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm just going down Alexander Park.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've got to meet some bloke at 9.
This is me.
Yeah.
Do you want a cup of tea?
No, look, I've got to go and meet this bloke.
Yeah.
All right, I'll see you later.
Where did Bobby go next, and who was he meeting?
On the last trip, I was going down the Bohemia Road past a kebab shop. I saw Bobby standing with 2 people. I flashed the lights at him. He waved as he normally does in passing. The other 2 guys just didn't even look at me. I carried on the journey.
Half an hour later, and a mile away, in Alexandra Park. Three hours later, and a few hundred yards up the same road, a shift worker was on her way home through the now deserted park.
I remember thinking, how odd. Why would 2 people, one in the front, one in the back, be sitting in a place like that with no lights, nothing?
Next morning, Bobby was found lying nearby. He'd been stabbed in the neck.
Kate Bentham, have you got anywhere with a motive?
Yes, we know that Bobby was a supplier of drugs to friends and acquaintances in All Village. He wasn't in it for the money, but for a few days before his death, he'd been talking about making a meet in the park to obtain a supply.
Have people who dealt drugs with him come forward to help with the inquiry?
We've spoken to many people who have users of drugs, but we must remember here that we're investigating a murder, and there is a reward of £10,000 for the right information.
So I think if you read between the lines, you're not too interested in small drug deals, you're interested in information on this case. A £10,000 reward.
That's right.
Now let's look first of all at the man who has ginger hair that was seen by the 2 lads. Each of them has done what's called a CD fit.
We must be clear, that's of the same person.
This is the same man as seen by each child. One's in colour, incidentally. He's got ginger hair in both. The other one's in black and white. Tell us about him.
Is described as between 5'2" and 5'8", medium build, late 20s, early 30s, and with an accent that's not from the area of Hastings, probably from the north.
Right, that's in the old London road where Bobby lived. Then in Bohemia Road, about 2.5 miles away, at 11 o'clock, 2 different images.
Yes, he was seen by a bus driver standing with 2 other men. They're both described as late teens, early 20s, medium build, between 5'6" and 5'8".
The one on the left has got the red baseball
very
pack
distinctive. He's got a red baseball hat turned back to front, and was wearing a grey short sleeve, possibly a baseball shirt, which was unusual for that time of the year because it was very cold that night.
Bobby must have been driven there, must he? Because that's, as I say, a couple of miles from where he lives in All Village.
I expect so. He was seen about 5 or 10 to 11, 2.5 miles away, closer to where he lived, and somebody would have given him a lift, or he got a taxi or something like that.
Do you know anything about that car in the park? Have you got any more information on it, what it was like?
That's described as a dark-coloured car with a dark rear spoiler. It's thought to be a Ford Escort type, a Mark III, possibly an XR3 or an XR3i.
All right, well, if you can help eliminate any of those, if you can help identify any of those people, here's our number in the studio. We're live, the lines are free, so are the calls, 0500 600 600. Or you can ring the incident room direct, that's on 01 424 456 002. That's Hastings 456 002.
Case is an assassination, a murder to order by the look of it, but no one is quite sure why. Did the hitman go for the wrong target? Was an earlier attack unconnected, perhaps just a bad coincidence? In the 2 months since Richard Watson was shot, detectives haven't come across anything that might be a motive. What they need now is people, friends, family, acquaintances who know anything that could be a key to his murder.
This is Trafalgar Computers, one of the best-known traders in used computer hardware. It was founded by Richard Watson 7 years ago.
Dad? Yeah. I'll be back in a sec.
Yes, Jim.
Is this part of the shipment to go via Peterborough?
Yes, all this lot here.
I started working with Dad in March last year. He bought and sold predominantly second-hand mainframe computer equipment, and it was an opportunity to spend more time with each other. I think he regarded the job as a hobby more than anything. And he actually woke up in the morning, and he was the kind of person that would wake up and say, "Great, I'm going to work this morning. I love it."
Richard lived here in East Grinstead, Sussex. He'd been married for 11 years to his third wife, Linda.
Dad was quite flamboyant. He had good fun, and everyone that he did business with always thought that he was good fun to work with. Whatever he said he was going to do, he always did it, and he never reneged on anything that he said he was going to do. Completely honest and straightforward. And even if it would mean that a certain deal would make a loss, if he had to fulfill his commitments, he would do so.
We've got some stuff we're sending over next week. Mm-hmm. Yes, wonderful, yes. Yes, it's going very well. Very well, yes. A noisy market, as they say.
We were normally the last people in the office, Dad and I. And at the end of the day, when the phone stopped ringing and everything went quiet, we'd have a 5 or 10 minute chat.
Stansted or East Midlands, possibly, don't know yet. Tell you what, Jim, you go ahead, I'll lock up, all right?
You sure?
Yes, quite sure. Sorry, just saying goodbye to Julian. Yes, oh good. Yes, well, I thought...
Across the road, the day was winding down as well.
See you, mate.
I work as a mechanic for Pat's Garage. That particular evening, I left about 6 o'clock.
Bye.
I got in the car, I come up the Charwood's Road. I saw 2 men running across the forecourt of Mr. Watson's factory. One was a coloured chap, the second one was a white chap. Late teens, early 20s, both about 5'6", 5'8".
That night, though it's not known how or where it happened, a tyre on Richard's car was punctured. Had it been tampered with?
Help! Get off! Get off! Help! Help me! Help!
What's up, Mr. Watson?
I've just been attacked with a stun gun. Call the police!
Go on, Baz. You stay with me, I'll go and phone the police.
He was obviously very shocked, which he tried to hide. It was something that baffled us all. We, the 2 chaps that did it, they didn't steal anything. They didn't attempt to get into the building, and they didn't say anything either to Dad or to each other, which made it even more confusing.
Three weeks later, Tuesday, December the 10th, a day which Richard spent largely in his car, driving to see customers in Rickmansworth and Peterborough.
Hello? Oh, Julian, yes, hello. Hi. Yes, I am. Yes, that's it. And we come to a mini roundabout, you say, and we turn left. Good.
Richard was expected home in East Grinstead as usual at 6:30. On the lane behind the Watsons' house, a neighbour was also coming back from work.
I was driving home about 6:20. As we were coming up Sandhorse Hill, we saw a man who was standing on the very dangerous bend. He was about 5'11", in his early 30s, dark hair, with a long, thin face. I can't imagine what he was doing except to use the footpaths that come out near to Mr. Watson's house.
But Richard was an hour late. He stopped for petrol 8 miles from home at 7:20.
Hi! Where are you?
I'm at Blindley Heath with Julian, yes. I've just got to drop him off at the office, then I'll be home.
Fine. Okay. Yeah, I'll get the drinks on the go. Bye.
Richard had been killed at close range with a shotgun. A few hundred yards away, a man was seen struggling with a holdall. Was this the assassin?
We, as a family, can't understand why this has happened. And it is at the moment apparently motiveless. And we need, for our peace of mind, to find out why it has happened. And Dad needs to have justice.
Paul Westwood, Richard Watson was well known locally. To all intents and purposes, he was well liked.
Yes.
Who would want to kill him?
Well, all the information we've had so far is that Richard Watson was an honest, well-respected businessman. He was well-liked in his profession. He was a good family man. He had no enemies. So really it's a mystery as to why he should be killed or why anybody would want to kill him.
I should say an incentive here, as if an incentive is needed, is a rather substantial reward or not?
Yes, the family put up £10,000 as a reward, and Sussex police have put up a further £10,000, and since then Linda, his widow, has put up a further £30,000.
So who are you appealing to in particular then?
Well, we know that Richard Watson had been working in the computer business for 20 years, and for the last 7 or 8 years he worked as himself and was quite successful. What we really need to know is from anybody who's had any dealings with him in his business life or knows anything about his personal life, which may have some ideas or give some motive as to why he was murdered.
You've had one call from someone called Tom who you'd like to hear from again.
Yes, indeed. Some time ago a man calling himself Tom rang into our incident room and gave us some very good information. Unfortunately, he didn't give us a lot. We believe he can tell us a lot more, so one of our appeals is for Tom to contact us again, please. We really need to hear from him.
Well, let's hope he's watching tonight and does something about that. Now, that first attack on Richard Watson that we saw in the film 3 weeks previously, when those two men with balaclavas attacked him with a stun gun.
Right.
I mean, was it a coincidence or do you think it was linked?
Well, we don't know if it was connected. What we do know is that I need to identify those two men. We need to eliminate them from what is really a serious murder inquiry, so we need to know who they were.
So basically, they better come forward because otherwise they are suspects in a murder, if they, of course, they weren't.
That's right, yeah.
They weren't the murderers. Now, the man seen in the bushes on the night of the murder, how significant was he?
Well, that is very interesting. It is significant because two reasons: where he was seen and the time. He was seen at 6:20 p.m, which is about 10 minutes before Richard normally gets home. And he was in an area which is immediately behind Richard's house. He was seen by two people, actually. The first person who described him on the film and the second person who saw him, but he thought he may have been wearing either a balaclava or it may have been a hood. But it is interesting.
Yes, and the person that you really, really want to track down is the man seen running away.
Yes, now that is the one I really need to find out. This is a man who was seen running along Holteye Road in East Grinstead, away from Richard's home, and he was about 150 yards away from Richard's house. And he was seen to be struggling with a holdall which could have carried a shotgun. He was wearing a balaclava. Now I need to know who he is, what he was doing there and where he went.
Well, Paul Westwood, thank you very much indeed. Do remember there is a substantial reward here. If you can help, if your name is Tom and you rang them earlier, do call back. If you can help in any way, please ring Mr. Westwood or any of his colleagues here. 0500 600 600, that's 0500 600 600. Or you can reach other members of the team at the incident room in West Sussex. That's on 01444 445 900. That's Haywards Heath 445 900.
An extraordinary case, a double murder, or rather two separate murders, both of vulnerable people, both without apparent motive, and, as you'll see, they're linked by bizarre coincidence. They happened in January by the seaside in Hastings in Sussex.
Thinking about Clare, since her death, my family have to face reality, whereas before, that side of life was a fiction. I think that the criminal and the victim are somehow drawn together. My daughter was looking for a companion, and the criminal had his own ideas, and they were brought together by some mysterious alchemy. And the criminal always chooses the weakest in society, just as a lioness will choose the wounded deer. Clare was not suited for the cut and thrust of ordinary life. She was too much of an innocent, you know. I had this plan in my head to try and rehabilitate her, if you like. I blame myself deeply for letting her drift on in her own sweet way. I used to arrive every Sunday because otherwise she did not have visitors. So I felt I ought to make myself a visitor and a friend. Basically, I was taking her out because she'd mentioned that she was depressed. I think she felt the loneliness of it. In the basement, she was isolated from the rest of the community, and I think that depressed her.
Now then, where would you like to go?
Each Sunday they went shopping, and then Clare's father would take her for high tea. That day they went to Littlewoods, where there's a cafe in the store. They got back to Clare's flat in Cornwallis Gardens around 5 p.m.
Well, I'll see you next Sunday, weather permitting.
Thanks for the tea.
Bye.
Bye.
We both changed together. She was changing me and I was changing her. I felt really there was a warmth coming through, and then it was stopped, which I very much regret. I was stopped in midair.
About an hour and a half later, a jogger ran down Cornwallis Gardens. Was this you? 6 feet tall, mid-20s, with sandy blonde hair. Then, half an hour later, opposite Clare's flat.
Well, I was going to pick up my boyfriend, and there's not normally many places to park the car, but luckily there was about 3 car spaces, so I just pulled in. And as I did, I saw a car in front of me, facing me, with its engine running and the lights on. It was similar to a red Escort, can't be sure, and the headlights were square. It makes me think that either somebody was sitting in the car waiting for somebody to come out of the flat, or that they were maybe in a hurry and they were just nipping in to get something and come back out, and that's why they left the car running with the lights on.
Whose was this red saloon? Neighbours reported the fire at 7:15. Clare Letchford was found dead from smoke poisoning. Then, a week later, detectives met the next victim.
It's so terrible for someone to die in a house fire like that. Awful. Terrible.
Could I just take your name and address in case we have to contact you later?
Yes, of course.
Thanks very much.
It's Mrs. Beryl O'Connor, Dorney O'Connor, and it's 53 Clifton Court, Holmesdale Gardens. It's just over there.
Fine. Thanks very much. Thanks for all your help.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Here, let me give you a hand.
Oh, thanks very much. Just about to go and buy some ciggies.
It was certainly ironic, but it was also very, very tragic. And we're talking about another victim. And then the following day, she herself becomes a victim. I've worked on several murder inquiries in my career. Certainly that has never happened to me before, and I hope that it never happens again.
Known her for about 6 years. She was young at heart. She had so much to talk about, like, you know, interesting things she'd done in her life. Everyone just really took a shine to her because she was, I'd say, lovely. Remarkable, really.
Hello, David.
Hello, Donnie. Now, let me take that for you.
Thank you, dear.
Sit yourself down.
Thank you.
How are you, anyway?
Not too bad. The old bone's a bit creaky.
Never mind. You want a drink? It's whiskey,
Please.
innit?
Yes, please.
Have a whiskey, please, barman.
20 to 9 next morning, Monday, January the 26th, just up the hill from Clare's flat, Dorney's home in Clifton Court.
I've known her since we've been here, but not really got to know her well till her husband died. That was last June. And that's how I came to be doing the shopping for her, because I'd be going up the shop, and if I said, well, give me a ring if you want anything, which she used to do.
Here's your bread. Rose, what's that wet down there? Look, there's some more over there. It could be paw prints. No.
If it had been water, I thought, well, it maybe dried up or disappeared. So I was a bit worried.
Come on. Let's go and check the rest of the flat.
You just don't know who comes in and out. If it had been on my door, I don't know what I would have done. That's why I was worried, because she's on her own up there. She couldn't, move quick.
You are a good Rose.
Her neighbour was so concerned that she checked on Dorney several times that Monday morning. She last spoke to her just before lunchtime.
Thank you, Rose.
Later forensic analysis would find that the liquid at the entrance to the flat was mineral oil, possibly a lubricating oil. At 2:35 in a neighbouring block, a man was seen near the stairwell to Dorney's flat. He was slim and in his 20s with dark hair. Who was he? 5 minutes later, and just down the road, detectives were continuing their inquiries into Clare Letchford's death.
I didn't see her that much, say, on average about 2 or 3 times a month. Sometimes when she went past the window, I'd ask her to come in. She was like a lost sheep. Lonely sort. Not very good at looking after herself. Excuse me. Hello? Oh, hello, Dorney. No, I can't talk right now.
She seemed agitated, and I got the impression she wanted to get out of the flat,
OK, I'll see you in a minute.
The day was so muddled up, what with the police coming to tell me about Clare and then dawn ringing. It completely went out of my head. When the police come for the second time and told me that Dorney was dead, and I nearly passed out. There were 2 lovely, lonely people, and now they won't be there anymore.
He was approaching the bridge that I saw this man on the right side of it. Looked like someone in his early 20s. He was 5'9", 10", medium build. He had very dark hair, brushed to one side, slightly longer over the years. You could see that his chin was slightly square and his eyebrows very prominent.
Who was this? An innocent jogger or a double killer? At around the same time, a few yards up the road, firemen were called to Clifton Court. Dorney O'Connor was found in her burning flat. She'd been strangled.
Jeremy Payne, this must have had a profound effect on the community.
These murders have caused immense distress to the community and devastation to the family of Clare and Dawn. Dawn was a smashing person. She was lively, young at heart, and Clare was gentle and she wouldn't have harmed anybody.
Now, with no obvious motive, is the killer likely to be somebody who appears to be weird, who acts strange, or at least did around this time in January?
You're absolutely right. We have no logical or obvious motive, and it's quite likely that the offender would have behaved strangely before or after these crimes.
Now, obviously, there are people in the film that you want to eliminate, that you want to trace. Is there anybody else you need to find?
Yes, the week before Clare's murder, there were some young children messing around in a basement flat next door. They're 2 boys and a girl, aged between 10 and 14. They're not in any trouble, but we need to know who they were.
So, if you know who those kids were around Cornwallis Gardens on Sunday the 11th of January, call us straight away. What about the 2 victims? I mean, have you traced all of their friends? I mean, these aren't people who would have let anybody in the door. They wouldn't have let strangers in.
No, they were very security conscious, and it's very unlikely they would have let strangers in. We've spoken to many people, friends and people who knew these 2 ladies, but if you haven't come forward yet, please do so.
And do you know all you need to know about their movements around the time they were killed?
Well, in respect of Clare, her father had an arrangement with her whereby he would meet her in her flat at about 3 o'clock. Now, Clare wasn't there on that Sunday, and we don't know where she was earlier on the day. So if you know where she was, please give us a ring.
Sunday the 18th of January.
That's right.
What about Dawny? Accounted for all her time?
Now, Dawny, the critical time is 20 to 3 to 20 past 3 on that Monday. We know that Dawny was alive at 20 to 3 because she rang a friend, and at 20 past, the fire alarm went off, so the killer will have left her flat between those times.
And it was around 20 past 3 that runner was seen on the bridge, which is really right outside her flat. We had the artist's impression.
That's right. We put a lot of effort into tracing that man, and he hasn't come forward. It's purely for elimination purposes.
OK. Just tell me what the significance you think of the oil was at Dawny's flat on the floor, and how can viewers help about that?
I don't know what the significance of the oil is. However, that might be the last piece of the jigsaw puzzle in somebody's mind. If you're suspicious about somebody and you suddenly realise that back in January they had a can of oil they were carrying around with them, then we need to know.
OK. This is a very, very rare offence, of course. There's a reward of £10,000, but above all, these murders have caused a lot of grief, as you've just heard, and they still represent a serious danger. Here's Clare's father once again.
I would appeal to the family of the killer and ask them to consider very deeply whether what they are doing is the right thing. Think about it very deeply.
0500 600 600. And obviously the importance of calling now is to prevent another death. That's our free call to us here, live in the studio. And other detectives on the case are standing by on 01 424 456 060. That's Hastings, 456 060. Men now aged in their 40s and 50s who've lived in the Brighton area of Sussex. In 1967, a grammar school boy was murdered, probably by other boys who robbed him of 4 shillings. That's 20 pence.
What's the matter, Kim? Why are you home?
I don't remember very much before, and I don't remember very much after, but I do remember that incident. Unexpectedly, my father came home, and he was very upset. Very, very upset. I remember him opening the door to our lounge and just basically falling into my mother's arms.
Ken told me that Keith had been found on the past, and I said yes, well, he was going to Woodingdean, and that was the beginning of the rest of our life.
My father was a successful band leader. He had several orchestras that would go out under his name, Ken Lyon Orchestra. This was the time my parents seemed to have everything they wanted, really, and had a nice house, had 2 children. They were very happy at the time.
I saw a couple of nice suits that would be good for my holiday.
Most Saturdays, Dad had to leave after lunch to go to work, and the equally musical children had piano practice. But Keith asked if he could first walk to nearby shops to buy some things for school.
I'm coming with you.
So, around 3:45, wearing his grammar school tie and with 4 shillings in his pocket, Keith set off up Ovingdean Road and out onto the bridle path across the downs.
My husband was at work, and I think it was the Metropole Hotel.
Well, that was marvellous. Thank you from the orchestra.
The detectives had gone and told Ken, and he'd just got off the stage and came with them. He was just shattered, and then, of course, the police told us what they knew, and they eventually went, and we just sat and with our arms round each other and wept.
It was a frenzied and vicious attack. Those are the words of a senior detective.
Keith had been stabbed 13 times, and it all made front-page news.
A painstaking inch-by-inch search of these vast, fallow farm fields behind me, looking for clues.
But some key people were never found. There was a motorcyclist, but above all, a group of boys seen fighting. Were they just larking around, or were they robbing Keith? The knife itself was found nearby in the grounds of Fitzherbert School. It had been given away with packets of washing powder. 50 yards away is a cemetery with public lavatories, and more clues were found there.
Good morning. Are forensics here yet? Yes, Mr. Marshall's already inside. Thank you.
Someone had been washing in a hurry. There was Keith's blood, but also someone else's, and fingerprints.
There was an enormous investigation at the time. They fingerprinted some 6,000 local youths aged between 12 and 18. But it wasn't compulsory. The police couldn't force anybody to have their fingerprints taken. It was a voluntary thing with the permission of their parents. And so a number of youths or children at the time did not have their fingerprints taken.
In the next few weeks, someone wrote to the police claiming to know who was involved. These may well have been a hoax, but almost certainly several people did have some idea, and no doubt they still do.
As this murder is still unsolved, somehow my life has been held in a kind of limbo from the day he died until the present day. Whoever did this murdered my brother and took away my childhood. And I can honestly say I haven't had a happy day, a happy, complete day in my life.
David, it's such a tragic story, and the tragedy goes on. I'm just trying to think of people in the community 33 years ago who heard something, or who are on the fringes of this, who know something. How can you prompt them to ring in now after all this time?
Well, advances in technology mean that we can take a fresh look at the evidence that was found at the time. It may be that if those youths were involved, there's perhaps one of them didn't play a major part, and perhaps with his conscience now playing on his mind, he should make contact with us, tell us his side of the story before we go knocking on his door.
So a bit like the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, you're now using new forensic science techniques on evidence from the time.
That is correct, yes. We're able to do that with the evidence that we found.
Now, so many people must have known something about this. I mean, let's face it, this wasn't a band of carefully plotting villains. It looks as though this was a bunch of kids. They don't know how to keep a secret. This would have spread like wildfire. Lots of people would have heard about it. Lots of people would have suspicions.
That's right. We're sure the answer lies somewhere in the community. We want people to, if they've heard anything, somebody said something to them, we want them to come forward and tell us what they know. We can then decide and assess whether that information will take us further forward with this inquiry.
And that's just not one person you need lots of people to ring. You need all the bits of arrows to come and point in the same direction. I know you've already had one call, even before Crimewatch was on the air. Because of the reconstruction, the Brighton Argus was doing a feature. Somebody saw that and has already rung you, but not coming up with enough information.
That's right. There was a motorcyclist shown in the clip. We weren't able to trace that person at the time. If they're watching, please contact us. The person that has contacted us say that they know who that motorcyclist was. If that person's watching tonight, can you please contact us again? We are determined to do everything we can for Keith's family to find out who is responsible for killing him.
Well, let's try and solve this tonight. Please, please do call. Anything you know at all. The incident room is a local call number 0845 60 70 999. That's 0845 60 70 9999. Or call us here in the studio. It's a free call 0500 600 600.
Appeals from all across the country, and with your help, we hope some criminals are about to be caught, like the killer of Sarah Payne.
Here's the man who is running perhaps the highest profile investigation in the country, Peter Kennett. Little Sarah Payne disappeared near her grandparents' home in Sussex in early July and was found dead just over 2 weeks later. There are now strong leads, and Sarah's grandfather explains for the first time what happened on the day she vanished.
We had dinner, and it was such a lovely evening that we decided to go for a walk on the beach, and which, you know, the children were very excited about because they love going on the beach. We were walking along, as you do, throw stones in, laughing, joking, and the children got a little bit fed up, and they said to Sarah, "Mummy, can we go and play on the swing?" Which is a field just at the back of my house. And they all run off as children do, laughing and jumping and skipping. The little ones were playing dinosaurs. And Sarah said that she was going home, she didn't want to play anymore. Well, she went across the field out into the road. Lee went diagonally opposite to cut through the edge to jump out on her. She wasn't there. It was that quick.
It's impossible to say exactly what happened to Sarah. It's most likely that she was assaulted and murdered very soon after the abduction, and it's likely that it was carried out in a vehicle which would have been parked in a lay-by or just off the road in an isolated spot, but somewhere probably not too far from where Sarah was abducted.
I can virtually remember every day what things that happened. Every day the press was turning up. I mean, I've never been in front of a television camera before in my life. We had to do it for Sarah's sake. I suppose it was probably a week had gone by, 10 days had gone by. And we started talking, and I said, I think we better prepare ourselves for the worst.
Police searching for the missing 8-year-old Sarah Payne have found the body of a little girl in West Sussex.
My mobile went, and the wife said, I think you better come home. I said to Mike, you've got to get home, mate. He looked at me and I looked at him. He said, oh God. And we drove home and we went into the driveway, and there was 2 police cars there. I was in the garden. We walked into the garden, and the look, he just knew. He knew. I found her.
The stretch of the A29 where Sarah was buried is a very nondescript piece of road. It's that part that is between the Brinsbury Agricultural College and the Tote Cafe. On that Saturday evening at about 11 o'clock, a lorry driver who was driving a 7.5-ton curtain-sided truck could well have seen the murderer of Sarah Payne. A vehicle pulled out from the exact spot where Sarah had been buried, and it caused this lorry driver to brake sharply to avoid it. There's little doubt in my mind that the murderer had just buried Sarah. That driver could have also taken the registration number of the car down. Now, wouldn't that be wonderful? It's possible that the killer of Sarah may well have been driving in the area. One particular location that is of interest is the Texaco garage at Buck Barn, which is at the junction of the A24 and the A272. I appeal to any witnesses that were in the area at that time. Did you see a man that was nervous, agitated, sweating, perhaps dirty from having dug a grave? Did you see him in a vehicle? If you did, please contact the programme. It's vital that we speak to you. It's likely that the killer returned to where he buried Sarah on that Sunday morning after Sarah was murdered. At the Tote Cafe, there was a car boot sale. Lots of people attended. Now, at that stage, of course, we hadn't found Sarah, so you may have seen something suspicious and not even connected it with the Sarah Payne missing person inquiry. So please rack your brains. Think, were you there? Did you see anything suspicious? That stretch of road is used a lot by bikers. Were you on that run on the 2nd of July? These witnesses, who we have yet to trace, could well hold the key to this inquiry, to finding the murderer of Sarah Payne.
I've got photographs of them from birth right up to just before she went missing, I think. So, I mean, she loved dressing up. She loved writing little notes to everybody. The last note she wrote to us before she went out that door was Mrs. L. Payne, which is the wife. I love you so, so, so much. It was weird. Just a few weeks ago, they come down and laid 4 breakfast plates out. And the wife said to me, there's only 3. There is somebody out there who knows what happened to Sarah. They know. And I plead with all my heart for them to get in contact. Because please don't let that happen to another little girl.
Peter, it must be a hugely emotional inquiry for you and the team.
As was the reconstruction. The first time I saw that was yesterday at a briefing down in Littlehampton Police Station. The entire team were there, 40 detectives. As soon as that started, you could have heard a pin drop. I was not the only person to have tears in my eyes and dabbing them with a handkerchief. It does highlight the bravery of Terry Payne, and particularly the Payne family, who've been absolutely marvellous throughout this entire inquiry.
So many people around the country, you know, dabbed their eyes with a handkerchief when they heard about what happened, and so many people have tried to help. Now, surely everybody who could help has already tried to.
We are still missing witnesses. We are, for example, there were 2 horse riders on the beach on that Saturday, the 1st of July. There are also children by the swings that we need to see. A number of witnesses there.
Tell us what that beach is called, Marky. Most people don't know the name of the beach that you go and visit, I suppose.
It's Kingston Gorse Beach, which is a beach between Littlehampton and Worthing.
So children as well, who may not be watching this programme because they're in bed, but you want parents to look back in their diaries, 1st of July.
So look in your diaries, in your calendars for the 1st of July and ask the children, were you there? Were you on that beach?
Now, there have been all sorts of strange sightings as well. I know that there's one bonfire in particular that you're trying to find out more about.
Yes, there was some hardboard and MDF wood that was on a bonfire which had been taken from a van. It was there for 3 days. The bonfire wasn't lit, and the wood was was taken.
Salvaged. I mean, probably
salvaged.
Entirely.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you want whoever salvaged that plywood or whatever it was to let you know.
Yes,
where is that wood now?
Absolutely.
And it might be connected. Might have forensic clues on it, of course. And if it did come from a van, somebody would have refitted the interior of a van or a vehicle like a van on the 1st or 2nd of July.
Yes, in that Littlehampton, Angmering, Rustington area.
So anybody was asked to do that, please call.
Absolutely, yes.
A shoe, one of Sarah's shoes, a little ladybird shoe, size 234 or 34, was found in Coolham near the Celsians. You've never found the rest of her clothing?
We haven't, no, and we're still searching for it now, and we're desperate to find it.
This is an identical dress to the one that she was wearing. So if you found that or anything like that, let us know, please. Or a spade like this that was used to dig the little grave. This might have all been burned off by now. This is plastic, but of course that part, the blade, would still be there. And it had some damage to the right-hand corner.
It's a lady's border spade, 14 centimetres wide.
Okay, there's a substantial reward as well.
£150,000.
So please, any way that you can help this, but leave this to the Sussex area, please, and try and be specific about calls. please ring us in the studio on our free phone number 0500 600 600. It's on the screen for most of the show. You can call the Instant Room direct, that's a local rate call, 0845 60 70 999. One of the other crimes that struck a chord with Crimewatch viewers was a murder in Worthing on the Sussex coast. In fact, you may remember the name of the victim, Jean Barnes. Jean Barnes had lived in this house since the 1950s when she was a civil servant. She was a Cambridge graduate, fluent in 5 languages. Tragically, the man she'd hoped to marry was killed in the Second World War, and after her parents died, she became a bit of a recluse and lived among the memories.
She was a very clever person and extremely bright. She was not senile in any shape or form. She knew exactly what was happening in the world.
University has awarded the Bulwer-Lytton Prize.
With my sight being a problem, she would often ring me up and she would read me the bits in the paper, which was very nice of her.
In fact, the neighbours would call each other regularly just to check they were okay.
Hello, Nan. Yes, I'm fine. And you? Good.
Between January and June of 1999, Miss Barnes reported a series of minor thefts.
Is that the police? Yes, it's Jean Barnes here. I'm sorry to bother you again, but a picture's now gone. You know, it's gone clean off my wall. That was a lovely picture.
The officers that attended couldn't find any forced entry. Naturally, the crime prevention officer went round and she changed her locks and took other security precautions.
More ominously, she was surprised on her doorstep and physically assaulted while putting out the milk one morning.
I suddenly felt he was grabbing me on the arm. Suddenly, I don't know, he was hiding in the bushes or something.
Do you know what he was trying to do to you? Was he trying to sort of attack you, or was...
I don't know. But funny things have been happening. It's very, very frightening.
Right. In April, she had a very strange phone call from a man. He pretended to be from her bank and asked very personal details about her date of birth and that sort of thing.
He wanted to know my age and my account number, and he asked me a lot of personal questions.
Then in May, she had a credit card and a bank card arrive from the Alliance Leicester and from Barclaycard. She hadn't ordered those.
But could you please find out what's going on? Oh, and I can't find my barometer anywhere.
In July, her neighbour, Mrs. Wolven, went on holiday. While she was away, Miss Barnes' milk was taken in, as were her papers and letters, though no one saw Jean herself. When Mrs. Wolven returned, she rang her friend, but there was no answer.
If she was watching the proms or the tennis or something that she was really interested in, she didn't always answer the phone.
So Mrs. Wolven tried again next day.
And that's when I began to get worried, and then I rang the police.
2 officers broke in and found a body covered in a blanket. The house was cordoned off, and within an hour forensic experts were called in. Miss Barnes had been attacked and battered on the head 9 or 10 times. She'd been lying there for days, maybe weeks.
I did say to the policeman, I felt awful thinking possibly she had been lying there a long time and no one finding her. Honestly, my breath just went. I just couldn't get my breath.
A few days later, the local milkman came forward with a note he'd found on Miss Barnes' doorstep. He'd thrown it away at the time, but found it again when he rummaged through his bin.
This letter said that Miss Barnes was going into a nursing home, she wanted to cease deliveries, and could the milkman leave the final bill. He'd left the bill, and it had been paid by a cheque.
Both the cheque and the note were dated after Miss Barnes' death.
So the note from the milkman was the first time that we knew that someone had been targeting her and had written the note to cover up the murder. As we later discovered, not only to cover up the murder, but to continue to steal from the house, even though her body lay there.
Then another piece to the jigsaw, a bill from Seaboard Electricity. The envelope had been torn in half and matched the note found by the milkman. But more intriguing, the electricity bill had been paid. So 3 samples of handwriting, none written by Miss Barnes. Who did write them?
Steve Scott, who is here, has got this letter, again the back of this envelope, which is addressed to the milkman. Look at the G there, which doesn't have a tail on it, whereas the Y does, and that's typical. None of the G's have a tail. And something else that you might see here.
Hello. My name is Mrs. Ridpath. I think I recognise the writing.
This letter came up and I was astonished to see something that I thought I'd seen before, or something very similar.
She could remember using a handyman some 4 years previously, David Munley, and not only had he done work for her, but he'd done work for an elderly neighbour.
And Mrs. Ridpath had good reason to recall that handwriting, because the neighbour had been defrauded by David Munley.
Well, this was the breakthrough, really, because not only did we have somebody that had targeted an elderly person in Worthing before, with cheques and bogus handwriting, but the key words on that letter going into a nursing home.
What's more, he lived here, just 200 yards from Miss Jean Barnes.
Did you write it?
No.
Have you handled it?
No.
Did you sign the entry?
No.
J.H. Barnes?
He totally denied any involvement in the murder. He denied knowing Miss Barnes. He denied ever being in Miss Barnes's house or having anything to do with her whatsoever.
Despite Munley's convincing denials, the evidence from his own home soon became compelling.
They lifted up the loose floorboard, and underneath there was Jean Barnes's membership card for the civil service. And so we had property from her, an understairs cupboard under the floorboards at his flat. While he was in custody, 2 antique dealers came forward to say that they'd heard that he'd been arrested and that they had been buying antiques from him, paintings and a barometer.
So, so you've still got the old barometer then?
Well, yes, got the barometer because it doesn't actually work.
The story he told me was that his aunt had passed away and she lived up in Norfolk or Suffolk, and he and his brother were actually clearing out the property and bringing it all down here to sort out and sell.
When we looked at the paintings, they had stickers on them that were 100 years old in Miss Barnes's mother's maiden name, and we had property back in the house which had rickets and the same sticker from this removal company in Manchester. So we were very, very pleased with what the antique dealers were telling us.
Then, conclusively, a tissue found at the scene of the murder came back from the labs with Munley's DNA, and a footprint in the hall matched his shoe.
David Munley, you are charged that you, between the 1st of July 1999 and the 26th of July 1999, at 9 Tennyson Road, Worthing, in the county of West Sussex, murdered Jean Helena Barnes, contrary to common law. Do you wish to apply to that charge?
Yes, I did not murder Jean Barnes.
In December, with overwhelming evidence against him, David Munley was convicted of the murder. But he has never admitted his guilt.
He was a very evil man. He broke into an elderly lady's house. He knew that she lived alone. He battered her to death. He covered up her body, and then he continued to steal from the house.